This is some video that I just took a week ago or so when I was in Helper, Utah, and there's very little narration in the video while I'm taking it, just showing you some of the plasma fire from around town. And mostly this will be for the new viewers, because I know there's a lot of new viewers. Before the Lahaina fire, my channel was at like 2,500 subscribers, and now it's at like 55, and a lot of those came immediately after the Lahaina fire. And I'm getting a lot of people saying this isn't geomagnetic induction, there is no pole shift, it's all directed and weaponized against us the people. And they don't recognize I have hundreds of videos, kind of like what you're going to see here, where it shows this plasma fire burn happening in random places that cannot be considered directed or weaponized. And that also relates to the chalk body outline in EBT saying, what am I shilling for big fence post? They're not going to be shooting directed energy at some random fence post in the middle of Colorado or Utah or Idaho or whatever. That is true, and that's why I say it is both. We'll talk a little bit more about that, but the song for this is going to be High Hopes by Pink Floyd. Hear the bell? Helper, Utah. There's me. Beyond the horizon, in a place we lived when we were young, in a world of magnets and miracles. Our thoughts strayed constantly and without boundary. The ringing of the division bell had begun. So this is an example, along with a bunch of others I'm going to show you here, of plasma burn in random areas where it cannot be considered weaponized or directed. The 5 Secret Service vehicles of Joe Biden, they bear the same resemblance and the same burn patterns as many others that obviously shows they're using the same energy as what was used in Paradise and Boulder and all these other places where the engine block melts and the glass melts. In these cases, it's a little tough to say it's weaponized and directed when it's just hitting a sporadic tree. Little here, little there. How can you say that's weaponized and directed energy? Rather than a natural release, a sporadic, random, uncontrolled, and undirected release of the type of energy that burns trees from the inside. I've got hundreds of videos showing this. Links will be in the description for plenty of examples of those. Part of the reason I'm not even going to tell people why I went to Helper. It might be my new home. I really like it. It's here, there, and everywhere. It's a little coal town. But as you can see, this is plasma burn. It's electricity coursing through these trees. There's a cool one here in a minute where it takes a perfect circle right out of a tree, like a laser beam got shot right through the tree and chopped a circle out of it. Back to the Helper tour. Helper tour. Oh, and I think Helper's gonna be my new home. Yeah, it might be my new home. I think Helper's gonna be the new Park City when it comes to art. Unfortunately, that means the rainbow culture is coming along with them, but there's a lot of investment going into Helper. And it's the new mecca of art, I believe, because Park City has become so corporatized. And it's just so crowded. Helper is full of major hotels. They were brothels back in the day, and that's all that there was in Helper was a bunch of brothels. And those 5-story hotels still exist in this little tiny town of like maybe 1,000 people, a couple thousand people. And a lot of them, there's a reinvigoration of the infrastructure, a lot of investment going along in Main Street of Helper, Utah, of the coal everywhere. The eclectic eccentric art people from New York and LA that go to Park City for the Sundance Film Festival. And there's lots of art, not museums, but galleries in Park City. Well, it's become too corporatized and jam-packed, and it's as packed in Park City as it is in LA. So I think Helper, Utah is going to be the new getaway retreat for people that do enjoy the art, that don't like to be around a bunch of pretentious people who pretend to enjoy art. There's a reinvigoration of the community there, and there will always be a community there because of the coal. Just like many of ghost towns that have died out, this one didn't die out, and it's from it would have if it weren't for the coal industry that keeps a couple thousand people employed in these mines, loading the trains and unloading the trains and processing the coal. So there'll always be a town there, and they have their own energy source. No matter what happens, they've got their own energy source, and the rest of the world needs that carbon. That's Balance Rock up there. That's kind of their trademark signature. You can't really see it well from here. That's the mailman on a dirt road. Rolling on a dirt road, smoke rolling out the windows. Yeah, it's a cool little town. And just the vibe of it. I'm probably going to go back and maybe do a dirt road, a Main Street tour to show you what's on Main Street. I really like the vibe of this town. But like I said, it seems like there's a lot of investment coming in there from the LA, New York art scene, and along with it comes the rainbow culture. They got Helper Pride, a little tiny podunk town in the middle of nowhere has Helper Pride. Carbon. Campaign. More carbon. With the posters and billboards and stuff. Anyway, maybe I'll go. That's the whole town right there. Over there on the other side is just like the outskirts. A little more residential, but that's just basic town. Check this out. Watch me fall and hurt myself. It's still snowy and slick. Yeah. Do that without hurting myself. It's almost like on the movie Real Genius or Weird Science. I forget which it was. It was either Weird Science or Real Genius, where they shoot a laser beam through a fence post and it makes like a perfectly circular hole. Very similar thing going on here. But it's not a laser beam going through the tree. It's an electrical filament going up through it kind of thing, I believe. But it's easy to see how people will go, that's a laser beam, it's directed energy, except it's just on a tree out in the middle of nowhere. Along with all the rest of these burn marks that show the same electricity burn signature, randomly, sporadically, here and there. So to the people who say, it's all directed energy and we're under attack, there is no such thing as geomagnetic induction, shut up, we're all under attack and it's all by the Lockheed Martin Athena laser weapon and the new Dragon Fire that they came out with. They would rather you think it's all directed, because if you knew. Gonna cruise in here and show you the plasma fire graveyard, where they round up a bunch of plasma fire from around town, throw it over here in this graveyard. I've come across a few of these in different towns. One of them is at the Fish and Game, directly across from the job site where I'm working at Jordanelle Reservoir. They've got a spot where they pile up the plasma burned wood, bring it all to one spot. Maybe so people don't see it when they're camping and fishing. But this is the plasma boneyard over here in Helper. And you hear me kind of sigh because I've been doing this 6 years now. This will be the 7th summer. 2018 was my first plasma fire in Spanish Fork Canyon. So that's 2018, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, and the summer of 2024 will be the 7th summer. It will be 6 full years, 7 summers in a row. And those are the circular burn patterns on the end of the branch that are the standard identifying marker, one of the many of plasma fire, a circular burn on the end of a branch. Over here you can see how it's taken out 3/4 of the log on the left side, but left it unburnt on the right. That didn't get pulled out of a campfire. That's plasma fire burned wood. I'm not going to describe and explain. If you've been here long enough, you've seen me do this long enough, you know what you're looking at as well. To people who don't, I explain extensively, repeatedly, in 100 other videos. You'll just have to go back to them. But this is definitely their plasma-fired graveyard, where they bring plasma-fired pieces of wood from here and there and throw them in a pile. Charcoal on the right, unburned on the left. Fire don't do that. You know, it's charcoal on the bottom, unburned on the top. And a fine line in between. Unburned line between the bark and the core wood. So no, it's not all directed energy. If it is, then they've been test firing their weapon system all across the planet, little here, little there, and that's possible. I consider that is possible. Trying to reduce the strike area. But they've perfected it. Remember, my neighbor's house got hit. And provably I've shown that that was directed, and that was the same plasma fire energy that hit my neighbor's house, so they can reduce it down to hitting one house, not someone in my neighborhood, the very next door neighbor who we shared a lawn with in Springville. So it can be localized down to a single house or possibly even a single person. I've shown you where they hit the cars in the garage of a house without burning the whole house down. And this type of weapon, being able to control it and narrow it down to a smaller point without burning a greater area, is actually making it more useful. So maybe there is a lot of test firing going on, but I believe this is a lot of its geomagnetic induction. Not all directed energy, but it is the same energy. Solar magnetic amplification causative configurator may be one of the weapon systems that uses this energy. And I've shown Skywatch Media. So here's a response that I gave to someone who is actually from Chile that I'm still learning. I'm just a truck driver who is good at seeing patterns. My best understanding so far is in the video linked below by Skywatch Media. Skywatch Media explanation of ground current surge that creates plasma fire. And the title of Skywatch Media's video is Earth's magnetic field suddenly vibrates, causing an unexpected electrical surge. The only thing I'll say is that this video was made back when we were during a solar minimum. We are now during a solar maximum. So when he explains that fluctuation in the magnetic field usually is associated with solar wind after a solar flare gets shot at the Earth. So when he says solar activity is very rare these days, that's because this video was made during a solar minimum. Solar activity is very common right now, but he explains, he shows you two different graphs. One that's graphing the electrical current in the ground, and another one that graphs the magnetic field. And he shows that when there's this fluctuation in the magnetic field, there is a simultaneous surge of ground current. And he says that this is this fluctuation in the magnetic field and the associated surge of ground current that ends up going with it was unexpected because there wasn't a solar flare hitting us that day. There was not increased solar wind. Thus, this may have been artificially induced, I would say, where they stretch the magnetic flux lines apart and then let them snap back together like a rubber band. And when they go boing like a guitar string, it creates a fluctuation in the magnetic field that creates this surge of ground current. Then the ground current can be directed, just like touching the outside of a plasma lamp. When all of those electrical plasma filaments suddenly get attracted to your finger where you're touching the plasma ball lamp, so it is when you touch the Earth with a grounding mechanism. It can direct that energy either to one house, and Tesla said, I can direct the power of the sun to anywhere on Earth. The solar magnetic amplification causative configurator is said to be able to create the effects of a solar flare and control the timing, intensity, duration, and location of those effects of a solar flare, like the Carrington event, on a push-button machine, and you can decide how long it lasts, how intense it is, where it hits, and you can make it hit one house but not the next, and then this house but not that house, this house but not that house, which is what we saw in a lot of these fires like Paradise. That's why I say this is happening naturally as part of the pole shift with the weakening magnetic field. There's a fluctuation in the magnetic field more often because it's weaker. And every time there is a fluctuation in the magnetic field, there's always a surge of ground current that goes with it. So when he titles this, Earth's magnetic field suddenly vibrates, causing an unexpected electrical surge, I would disagree. Every time the Earth's magnetic field vibrates, it creates an electrical surge. The electrical surge is not unexpected. When the magnetic field vibrates, what is unexpected at this time in this video when he's making this is why the magnetic field fluctuated and vibrated in the first place. That's what's unexpected. There was no solar wind causing it. What caused the magnetic field to fluctuate the way it did? Possibly it was artificially induced through technology.
In recent months, the Earth's magnetic field has been very quiet due to a solar minimum, which has been described as one of the deepest in the past century. Geomagnetic storms have become something of a rarity these days, as solar activity has become almost non-existent. Then something occurred on June the 23rd that had solar scientists scratching their heads, as instruments in the UK suddenly registered a magnetic anomaly. The local magnetic field began to oscillate with a continuous wave that rippled around the globe, lasting for more than 30 minutes. So what could have caused an unexpected electrical disturbance to take place? There was no solar or geomagnetic storm to cause the disturbance. Nothing was showing on the NOAA satellites for June the 23rd that would indicate an uptick in solar wind speed. Indeed, there was nothing showing that could explain the disturbance. So what could be the cause of a sudden electrical surge that was strong enough to vibrate around the world? In the Lofoten Islands of Norway, a similar magnetic anomaly was detected on the magnometer. According to observations, the anomaly was quite spectacular. The magnetic field was swinging back and forth by about 1/3 of a degree. Ground currents were also detected, with an almost identical 10-minute period. This is the second time in less than 6 months that an unexpected electrical surge and magnetic anomaly has been reported from Norway. On January the 6th of this year, sudden electrical currents started flowing, creating strong variations in the ground currents and the local magnetic field. The magnetic disturbance was captured by sensors at the Polar Light Center Observatory in Lofoten, Norway. Scientists described it as some type of a shock wave. It came as a total surprise. 15 minutes prior to the electrical surge on January the 7th, a NASA spacecraft recorded anomalies in the interplanetary magnetic fields situated near Earth, accompanied by an increase in solar wind density 5 times greater than usual. Scientists call the phenomenon strange, suspecting that the Earth may have crossed through some fold in the heliospheric current sheet. What was even more peculiar was that the electrical current flowing through the ground managed to electrify the sky with unexpected vivid auroras. It is uncertain as to the exact cause of this magnetic anomaly, but space scientists often refer to the phenomenon as a pulsation being continuous. where fluttering waves flank the Earth's magnetosphere even in the quiet moments of solar minimum, where waves can still be heard like a pin dropping in a room void of activity. On the day of June 23rd, the Earth's magnetic field was so quiet that the ripple was heard all across the world. The global network of magnetic observatories picked up wave activity from Hawaii to China to the Arctic Circle. Even in Antarctica, there was a sense that something unusual had occurred with the magnetic field. The continuous pulsations, referred to as PC waves.
Okay, I'm just going to leave this link in the description so you can watch the rest of it. This is about the end of this part of the presentation where he's referring to this. But it sounds like when they say the solar wind suddenly got up to 5 times what the normal rate is, and that this was very unexpected, and it's the second time that it happened in 6 months in Norway where the fluctuation of the magnetic field occurred. Sounds like this is testing of something like the solar magnetic amplification causative configurator. I forgot to turn my microphone back on, but this image right here is what Suspicious Observers refers to as the galactic current sheet. And he said, well, maybe that's why we crossed a ripple in the galactic current sheet. Or maybe it's artificially induced. They can't explain why the magnetic field fluctuated on that day the way it did. But I believe there is a natural cause of this type of geomagnetic induction, and it can be artificially induced. We can stretch the magnetic flux lines apart and let them go, and when they snap back together like a rubber band, it creates the energy that can then be directed. This song, High Hopes, is written from the perspective of the survivors after the reset. Looking beyond the embers of bridges glowing behind us to a glimpse of how good it was on the other side. Steps taken forward and sleepwalking back again, dragged by the force of some inner tide. At a higher altitude, with flag unfurled, we reach the dizzying heights of that dreamed of world. Encumbered forever by desire and ambition, there's a hunger still unsatisfied. Our weary eyes still strayed to the horizon, though down this road we've been so many times. The grass was greener, the light was brighter, the taste was sweeter, the nights of wonder, with friends surrounded, the dawn mist glowing, the water flowing, the endless river, forever and ever. Those are lyrics from the song High Hopes by Pink Floyd, where they're looking beyond the embers of bridges glowing behind us. What do you think those embers of bridges glowing behind us represent? Those who got out of here and watched the destruction down below as they left, just like in the Book of Enoch where they watched the destruction from above. The beginning lyrics are, beyond the horizon of the place we lived when we were young, in a world of magnets and miracles. Our thoughts strayed constantly and without boundary. The ringing of the division bell had begun. Hear the bell?
Helper Utah. There's me.